Hello everyone and welcome to another most impressive game from this year's Bundesliga from round 11. Round 12 starts in some 2 weeks, I've scavenged for some of the nicer games, and this is one I enjoyed in particular. And if you haven't seen my previous video, the one that Lila played against the engine Tucano, do check it out. It's one of the nicest games you'll ever see. And we've featured Eljanov quite a few times on the channel. Denis, we've only featured once when he played that brilliancy against Gilles Moussard last year. If you haven't seen it, I will put a link to that in the will be the first thing in the description below. Really an enjoyable game. But yeah, now let's get back to this one. It's Bundesliga, 8 players representing each team, and these two fine gentlemen are playing on board 1, so obviously a great honor. Pavel Eljanov representing Chess Club Zugzwang, and Denis representing EUWE. So let's check it out. Pavel with the white pieces opens with pawn to d4, and I will, mention it. It is a miniature we are talking about here. Knight to f6, we have c4, g6, knight to c3, and bishop to g7. So the standard line of the King's Indian defense, or the normal variation. Pawn to e4, pawn to d6, and now you can play many moves here. Pretty much any move is a move. Knight f3, bishop to e2. You can play pawn to f3. These are the top 3 options. Then you have some other options. h3, the move that was played here, the Makagonov variation, is the 5th most popular continuation nowadays. So okay, pawn to e5, striking in the center, and now d5, grabbing more space, and pawn to a5. So it's a pretty standard concept in the King's Indian defense that black will play on the king side, start marching with those pawns towards the white king, and the white will try to create some sort of a minority attack on the queen side. So a5 definitely works nice in stopping that. Bishop to g5, pinning the knight, knight to a6, as there's also a square for knight on c5, and without the ability for white to play b4, this will be an excellent outpost for this knight, controlling d3, attacking e4, and so on. So bishop to d3, bishop to d7, and now knight to g to e2. And there is a game where knight to c5 was played, but here we have pawn to h6 by Denis, and it is now as of move 9 that we have a completely new game. So okay, bishop goes back to e3, pawn to h5, and now queen to d2. Now you could repin the knight, but with the pawn now on h5, black will counter bishop to g5 with bishop to h6, so it's not as great. So queen to d2 first makes sense. Now, even if you want, you can play bishop to g5, because bishop to h6 will no longer be an option. So a4, grabbing more space on the queen side. We have castles by Pavel, castles by Denis, and now king to h1. Always a useful prophylactic idea. Pawn to c6 and pawn to f4 now. Both players striking against the other player's center. C captures on d5, f captures on e5, knight captures on e4, and now a fine move by Pavel. Bishop captures, showing that the knights will be the ones that are controlling the game, not the bishops here. So bishop captures on e4, d captures, and now you could go for e captures on d6, which is of course very nice, but bishop to g5 comes first. So the bishop does return, and now comes the magic moment. Here you have to play queen to a5. It's the only move for black to continue the game, even though it's going to be a much better position for white. But Denis played queen to c8. I'm not going to tell you why queen to a5 has to be played, because that will ruin our pause the video moment. So feel free to pause the video now and punish this insolence that is queen to c8 while I give you a couple of seconds. So for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on spotting that black is doomed here. Black is either losing material or black is getting checkmated. And it all has to do with the weakness of the dark squares that was sort of perpetrated with the queen coming to the c8 square. Now, the reason why the queen must come to the a5 square is to stop knight d5. Knight d5, once this knight lands, there is no helping black. Whatever black does, it simply doesn't work. Here, at least for the moment, you stop knight to d5 as the queen covers the d2 square. However, after queen to c8, Pavel just played knight to d5, and now you have problems. Knight to b6, will fork the queen and the rook, but you're not even interested in playing that. You want to bring the knight to f6 and deliver check, regardless of what black plays. Now, maybe a way to be particularly annoying here with black would be to play e3. and after bishop captures, you will play rook to e8, free up some squares for your king, and after e captures and d6, let's say queen captures and c4, knight to e7 with check, king h7, and bishop to d4. You can maybe try and hope to survive this, even though it's not possible to survive this. Let's say bishop captures knight, captures, and unless you're ready to play rook captures knight on e7, there's just not a good move here. The other rook is coming to c1, and white is the one controlling all of the squares. The black king is getting checkmated very soon. So instead, queen captures and c4 was played, but now comes the main idea behind knight to d5, which was missed with this queen to c8 maneuver. So knight to f6 with check, and now if you go back, you just lose the bishop on d7, so you have to capture the knight. Bishop captures was played. Now bishop captures on f6. Of course, not f captures, bishop captures is the way to go. Now queen to h6 followed by queen to g7 is the threat. So can you stop this anyway? King to h7, obviously the only way to stop it, and now the move you have to find, but once you see it, of course, you immediately believe it, knight to g3. And now the point is, whatever you play, knight captures on h5 is coming, there's no stopping that. So here, knight to c5 was played, getting the knight into the game. Hopefully you can get it to e6 to somehow help out with the defense of the g7 square. So now queen to h6 will be met with knight to e6, but of course knight captures on h5. And if you capture it, the point is queen g5, there's no defense against queen captures on h5, king to g8, and queen to h8 checkmate. So here, after knight captures on h5, knight to e6 right away, not touching the knight on h5, and now comes the, well, I dare say it, the nicest move of the game. Feel free to pause the video and end the game, you know, in a fine fashion while I give you a couple of seconds. So, for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on always looking for the most aesthetically pleasing maneuver. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, it is bishop to g7. This is what Pavel played, and he was in this position on move 23 that Denis Kadric resigned the game, as there is nothing more to be done here. Of course, capturing the bishop is out of the question. If you don't capture it, just queen to h6 check, king to g8, and queen to h8 will be checkmate. But if you capture the bishop, then comes knight to f6 check. You only have the h8 square. This is covered by the queen. This is covered by the knight. And the king has to go to h8, and queen to h6 is just mate in one. So what you would have to do after bishop to g7 is again play this e3 move, and after queen captures g5, sort of stops the attack. Black is still dead lost, but you know, if you we've seen an engine game in the previous one, so if engines were playing, you'd still be able to defend. And when you're playing, if you play against someone who, you know, doesn't mind what the position is, who just will play the absolute best move until you checkmate them, you will be forced to find your way through, you know, all sorts of tricks. So rook to f6, again with the threat of rook h6 checking, g8 and rook h8 checkmate. So king to g8, and now rook captures on e6. Now you can't capture with the queen because the knight to f6 check just ends the game. So you have to free up the f7 square for your king, but it doesn't matter. Here you can just, well, play whatever. You can capture on f8, and there's not much more you can do here. Queen captures on g5. The rook can come to f1 if the queen moves, but still it doesn't matter. You will go here, let's say, oh, sorry, queen to g7 with check, king to e8, and now e captures on d6, and no threats here for black. Checkmate is coming. So many things are possible here, but after bishop to g7, then he said, all right, I want nothing more to do with this game. You have your full point, good Sir Pavel. So yeah, that's the game. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Very nicely done by Pavel. Only 23 moves against the King's Indian defense. The tricky Makagonov variation. And yeah, if you haven't seen the game Denis Kadric versus Gilles Moussard from last year, will be the first link in the description below. And also, if you guys have the time to check out Lila's game from yesterday, it was absolutely spectacular. So yeah, once again, really hope you guys enjoyed it. I would like to thank Daniel Heist, GMD over GMG, Anthony Palumbi, Matthew Witten, and Kristen is the best wife for your contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon. Continuing to check out your wonderful suggestions and whatever else happens in the chess world. So thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.